Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for this episode of our clinic as we offer up detailed instructions for different classes of poses. Today, Melissa and I are going to go over some of the nuance cues for lunges. We'll start with low lunges, we'll take a few different variations, go over different anatomy in those poses, and then we'll move on to high lunges and create some variation there and give y'all some in-depth information on how to make these poses really work for you.
Yes, let's get right into it. How do you want me?
Okay, so we're gonna start the practice low to the ground. So let's start in downward facing dog just so that we can work with transitions. A lot of times when you're creating a vinyasa class and you're working through sequencing, we're gonna move most of our sequences through the bulk of the class from downward facing dog. It's an excellent transitional position and we're gonna utilize it today. So from here, as Melissa adjusts into her shape using all the principles that she knows about alignment and about her own anatomy, she's setting up a really strong space here, and then we're going to start with the right leg as we typically do, and she'll take her right foot to the inside of her right thumb. Such a specific cue allows you to really set up optimal alignment with your toes, your ankle, your knee, your hip, and then from there creating this diagonal relationship to the back leg. So as Melissa's brought her foot forward, it sets her up really well for the shape. See the length of her extended leg. She's got a lot of stretch through the front body on her left side, really using the strength of the right foot to stabilize the entire shape. So she's anchored into her right foot, pressing down into all four corners. You can see here that she's barely touching the ground because the shape is so stable that her upper body wants to pick up. So go ahead and lift your arms from here, Melissa. Right, so because the shape against the ground was so stable, it's like her upper body was urging to rise up. It's a beautiful place to be. So as we analyze the shape that she's got here, she's pressing down into the back foot really firmly. The top of the ankle is pressing into the ground. Not everybody is going to be able to get that kind of shape there. Melissa's arms are probably killing her. So we're gonna let her take her arms to the inside of the right foot now. And as she takes her hands down to the inside of the foot to create the next variation of this shape, she'll heel toe her right foot out to the side, giving her a little bit more room. And now the hands can go a little bit wider and she can feel the width of her collarbones open up. So we moved from a low stabilized lunge now into what we would call like a lizard variation. So from here, what she's able to do now is deepen the stretch through the extended leg, stabilize even further the right foot and the muscle action of the right thigh. And now she'll lower herself down onto her forearms if the flexibility is available to her. And it is. And see how she moves from her heart space. There's still lots of length through her spine here. Openness through the throat, through the crown of the head. So she's anchored firmly into the foundation of the shape. And this affords her upper body to find more space. And then in the practice, what we're hoping to do is move into that space so we find more length and depth in the shapes that we're creating in our bodies. So a lot of times in our practice, a shape like this will come early so that we're building a little bit of internal heat and generating warmth inside the body. So the other day when we were practicing the shape in a class that I taught, we transitioned this into something a little bit more challenging. So from here you could do all kinds of things. For our purposes today, we're gonna create a twist. So in order to move through the twist, Melissa's going to press her left forearm into the ground and take her right hand to her right knee. This is one variation, staying low to the ground. The leverage that she creates by pushing her right knee away allows her to twist her belly toward her inner right thigh. Her left ribs are going to be key to this. So if you draw your left ribs from underneath up and around, the rotation through the abdomen becomes much more liberating. And then her neck has got lots of space. She grows long through the sides of her neck, and then her chin turns up over her right shoulder, or in some degree in that direction. It'll depend on your personal flexibility. So this is one variation, keeping the forearm low to the ground. Melissa, if you want to put your right hand down, restabilize. You can come onto the palms now, pressing into the ground. We'll recreate that shape because she can twist here in a higher version. Look, and now she has all this rotation, right? So we're opening up the shape as it gets taller and taller. So again, rotating from the left waistline, and then she'll bend her right knee, creating another variation, her left knee, sorry, my bad. And then just draw the right shoulder back and then reach the right hand back. Her foot's right there, taking to the outside, right? And now she's got this really great connection throughout the whole body. So in order to really stabilize this and empower it more, she's gonna push her foot into her hand, fire up the quadricep on the left leg, rotate the left ribs further over, and see how much more dynamic the shape becomes. Breathing all the while. Good, and then with an exhale, releasing that shape. Awesome, awesome, awesome work. Okay, so shifting back, you're gonna wanna adjust these things. And Melissa's been on one leg for a hot second, so she can switch sides. And the thing about asymmetrical shapes is our bodies are divinely built like this. You know, we have a history of habits that we have every single day, injuries that we've maybe experienced. You know, our coordination is going to influence how these shapes play out side to side. So maybe your right side feels stronger. Maybe you're more flexible on one side or the other. Asymmetrical shapes are a great opportunity to witness your personal anatomy. So as Melissa adjusts into the first variation, shifting into the shape a little bit more, if you're really keen to notice, as a teacher you should be, look, she's even got a little bit less dorsiflexion on the right ankle. So as a yoga teacher, I'm taking this information in, and I wonder if she takes her hands back down onto her mat and just kind of works the back foot out a little bit more to the right, giving herself more space. Good, if we might not find just a little bit more flexibility in her dorsiflexion. And we do, just a little bit. It's there, I see it. Pressing down into those back toes. She can move through these shapes now once again, maybe lowering back down, coming onto the forearms. Good, and working with the top foot. So in this variation, Melissa's allowed the foot to stay stabilized, but she's winging the knee out a little bit more. This is another awesome technique. It's going to get into, you know, different muscle fibers. It's going to get into different connective tissue as well. So as she sits in the shape in this variation, she's creating a little bit more of a contraction here. Twisting in this lower variation again. And for her internal world and for your students' internal world, what you want to continue to remind them of is the things to look for. It's not about how the shape looks necessarily, it's about how it feels within them. As a teacher, you're using your eyes to assess the anatomy in ways that maybe you could help your students find more depth, but for them, it's going to be sensational. Direct them to that. So we want to always be engaging our students with creating more pockets of tension that they can work with. So there's lots of tension in this shape. She's holding herself. And in that tension, she's opening up. It's a really sweet balance to create. Awesome. And then back into downward facing dog as she adjusts. So those few variations can provide, here Melissa, you can come down onto your knees. Those basic variations for that stance open up a world of opportunity. So we've only expressed a few variations, right? Coming into lizard, having a twist, but you can do a world of upper body variations. You can take eagle arms, you can take goalpost arms. You can really create lots of different opportunities for your students, exactly, rolling into your interlacing hands behind you. There's lots of ways that we can create shapes that will then inform the practice that you're building them through. This is where it all starts. Like, look at all these variations Melissa's just coming through with her hands and her arms. These are things that we would teach depending on where we're leading students later in their practice. So these early lunge variations really open the door to different muscles that we're toning, variations that we're hinting to later, and different varieties of flexibility and strengthening too.
Some of the things that I want to bring up about the structure of the lunge is the stacking of the bones, the joints one on top of one another. So, having the knee way out far in front, having the knee over the ankle, like what's your wisdom on that? And then also, what's your wisdom on after we have the stabilization of the front foot, that foundation, the whole like dropping down in the front of the pelvis, that rather than cueing and having that pulling up through the inner thighs and pressing down through the front foot, back knee, so instead of collapsing that weight in the front here.
Yeah, these are great questions.
Yes.
So let's start with the knee positioning. So Melissa demonstrated that she can easily take her knee ahead of her toes and still keep her foot flat against the ground. You see, she's not going to hurt herself. The whole idea that like Melissa or anybody positioning themselves here is going to do damage is a little bit far-fetched. Is it optimal for you stabilizing the shape? Not really. Is it going to do destruction to you? Probably not. However, if we're balancing ourselves and we want to create strength in the muscle, stacking is the way to be. Yeah. And it starts with the toes, right? We want to build the foundation from the ground up. So the foot is really stable. The toes are spread just slightly. You don't need to be like efforting a lot, but you want to feel the pad of each toe against the ground. And this is a really great point for practice too, because if you get caught up in your head while you're practicing, a really great tool to refocus yourself is tap into the sensation of something as small as your pinky toe. Let me tell you, you put your brain into your pinky toe, it revolutionizes where you're focusing. Now you're in your body. So starting with the stability of the foot, of the front foot, and then the back foot is gonna matter too. The position that you have there, the stability that it provides. Just as much as you're pressing into the sole, you want to also be pressing into the top of the extended foot and the dorsiflexion through the ankle. So once we have that organized, right, that the knee is indeed over the ankle or as best you can, as long as the heel's against the ground, then we want to focus on the relationship between the knee and the hip. So that knee placement is going to specifically inform the sensation you're having in the hip. Once it's in prime position, a great cue that I like to use is to draw the front hip back in space. And as you do this, it stabilizes the hips from behind. So now, like Melissa mentioned, the dumping of the weight forward when you just kind of like collapse into the shape. See, her knee is lunging forward, her right hip isn't engaged at all. And what she needs to do here is squeeze the leg muscles toward one another, pull up from the low belly, and that's really the key here, and then continue to pull up through the heart space, up through the length of the neck, up through the crown of the head. All of these little micro adjustments are going to create a really strong and stable shape for you to create lots of variation with. So those are awesome things to address. Is there anything else that we could really pinpoint that you can think of?
No, for me personally, I know that I found a lot of strength, building of strength quick when I really engaged through that foundation, meaning like putting like the pressure on the heel and pushing the floor away with heel, pushing the floor away with knee. I felt like that fired up so many more muscles than when I didn't have awareness and I was just simply, just pressing into the foot, but not with intention. Does that make sense? Like I'm on my foot, I'm aware that I'm not on the inside edge, I'm aware I'm not on the outside edge.
Yeah.
And, like I'm aware that I'm pressing, but when you put that like extra like awareness and pressure down and the pulling up, like how quickly your strength can build.
Yeah.
Just by doing those simple things of becoming ultra aware of your foundation.
Yeah, those are great points to make because especially as a yoga teacher, when you're trying to up-level your cue game and you really want to reach your students and make a lot of impact and help them see change quickly, those kinds of cues, like you can get them into a shape, right? But then what are you going to educate them about once they're there? That's the piece that really makes a difference for people, I think, is when they're able to find nuances in the shape that help them engage with it in a way that does build their strength quickly. That's a really great point. So engagement's everything, really using your muscles. And as a teacher, cueing people to use their muscles is profoundly important.
So shall we get into high lunge?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
And let's do high lunge instead. Another transition point that we often come into our lunge sequencing around is from mountain pose.
Perfect.
There?
Yeah.
Let's start up here.
Great. So when Melissa begins at the top of the mat, she's going to come into a forward fold, actually. This is a really great way to transition into a lunge, a popular way to go about doing it. So from here, with her body folded in shape, her knees are nice and soft. She's got flexibility and that quality of tensegrity. So she's so strong, she's flexible. So flexible, she's strong. We'll start with the left leg lifted. So she's going to pick her left leg up, back behind her, stretching it all the way out and taking a big step back. So that mobility that she creates by using the extended leg to gauge the length of her lunge is going to be really profound. So rather than stepping forward from downward facing dog, which some students can find hindering, this opens up another opportunity to find the full length of her lunge. And look at how far apart Melissa's feet are stretched. There's a cue that I like to modify slightly. Imagine separating your feet the full length of your height. That's how long your lunge stance could potentially be. That's a big, long lunge, right? Like, I mean, Melissa's not that tall, but like the length of her legs, she is going to now engage with the strength of her feet in the position that they're in, right? Drawing the right hip crease back, pulling up from the belly, hugging muscle to bone, right? That's such a great quality cue because anybody can relate to that. They're just squeezing. This is the action of isometric. So now the thighs will isometrically squeeze together. By drawing the right hip back and the left hip slightly forward, it does that action. So now the left ribs are a little bit better organized and she can stay in this shape pretty comfortably. She's going to get tired fast. We all would. But with the right muscular engagement, she can hang out here a little bit more. Another tip for this is having the knee over the ankle. Indeed, Melissa, if you want to switch sides. Knee over the ankle is an excellent foundational cue. Once we're in these standing shapes and we're trying to really create that engagement, another thing you can think about is trying to like pull the mat in two directions. So she's pushing her front foot so far forward and pressing her back foot so far back that she's stretching the mat from the center. You know, it's one of these little like sensational cues that maybe will be useful. So now this front knee too, another cue that we can use is to angle the knee toward the pinky toe foot. And what this does is it engages muscles that'll help her stabilize the shape even more. There are 1,000,001 arm variations that we can do from this position. Starting here, reaching the arms up, right? Any kind of variation you could possibly think of, which will lead into the rest of the practice, are really valuable here because this will start to inform the other muscle groups in the upper body about what their task will be later on. Great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
the whole width of the leg thing and how tall you are. another way you could maybe measure is like, oh, well, what is like the depth of the pose for me if I go to like
Maximum.
Maximum.
Yeah.
And the stacking of the heel over the pad of the back foot. So bringing my heel, rather than having my heel pressed back on this back foot, stacking it over and then shimmying my front leg forward.
Work.
You know, like that's another good one. We're like, oh, snap, like I can get into it way deeper than I thought. And
Totally.
it's a lot. It's a lot of work, but.
Working that front foot forward is perilous though. She could do the same kind of thing by working the back foot back too. Like any way you want to move it, but that front foot forward, like, gets you goofy. It's hard work though. This is where we realize that like you don't have to do hard things in yoga to get awesome results. This is the simple stuff, right? So like simplicity and consistency, that's the theme again and again. So these two shapes are great transitional shapes. They're the foundation really for everything else. You'll notice as we progress through this that the foundational cues stay the same. The basic mechanics are the basic mechanics. It's how we use them and the nuanced cues that we create within that really make the difference.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to cover around specific lunge? Because it's kind of cut and dry.
It is.
Like you were saying, it's simple. There's so much simplicity, but there is like all that, extra depth that we have brought to everyone's awareness, hopefully. So
Yeah.
anything else that we're leaving out, I think we're good.
I think that this is complete for today. As we build into more and more of this content and we get to share variations, we'll build the shape again, but we'll take twists, binds, and we'll keep working through all of these really rich cues that help you improve your practice as a student and a teacher.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.